So thank you so much, and I simply leave you the floor, Stephanie.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Paloma and Daniel. Very well done for the introduction. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming here today. It's a pleasure to be here also for me. My name is Stephanie Ledermeyer. I work for the European Foundation for the Improvement of Living and Working Conditions. And we're actually doing quite a lot of research on the situation of young people in today's labor market. So at the entrance, you'll find our latest report, which talks about youth entrepreneurship. And if you want, I can share some findings on this later on. But today I'm really here in my role as, I would say, a guide through the next 1.5 hours, where we discuss some of the topics that Paloma and Daniel already introduced to you. I hope you find this interesting. I certainly think that is very interesting, because we have 5 speakers here that have all a lot of knowledge and experience in the field, and I hope that what we can do here is to have sort of a debate as well. So I'll ask some guiding questions, and then please feel free to interact really with us. Just raise your hand, maybe introduce yourself, say what your name is, where you're coming from, maybe what you're studying or what you're working on. And then we try our best to answer your questions. All right, now, without further ado, I will hand over to my colleagues here on the panel. And maybe I would like to start by saying, so what are those main challenges and barriers that keep us all young people from being as proactive as we should be and from reaching our full potential? And I don't know who wants to take. Maddie, maybe she was sitting next to me, and I just felt she had a lot of energy and already wanted to comment on what has been said in the introduction. So maybe if you want to start. Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. Perfect. Good morning. My name is Maddie. Maddie stands for Make a Difference Ideas. Everything I do has to make a difference. It's my name, but it's also my registered trademark. How many people believe in themselves enough to register their name as their trademark? Versace, Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, they all did it, why can't I? How many of you haven't got any qualifications? I haven't. I don't have any qualifications. I don't have any skills or training. I don't have any formal competences. I was in poverty when I started my business. I'm a single parent. I'm Asian, I'm female, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I have not used any excuses for not succeeding. So why are the young people of today using all the excuses they can find to not achieve their goals? It's for the reasons Danielle said. It's for the reasons Paloma said. It's the education system. Let's blame somebody. But we have a responsibility. Why do you do what you do? Ask your questions. Why have you done your degrees? Why did you go to school? Why do you do the jobs that you're doing now? Ask yourself when you get up in the morning, why are you doing what you are doing? This is why I am doing what I am doing. It's for my grandson and for my grandchildren and for the future of this planet. It's for all the young people, because I am too old now. I've had my time. I'm successful. I'm running 8 international companies and organizations across the world. But please, please stop using the excuses and start taking the responsibility. And this goes to you as individuals, but it also goes especially to the European Union. There is no crisis. It's in your heads. There is no crisis. What we had was a false economy. It's here to stay. Let's get used to it. Let's start living, and let's start making the difference that we need to create the sustainable planet. And that is what I'll talk to you about, entrepreneurship. I will just read you one thing that I think we should start with. No problem can be solved by using the same kind of thinking that created it. Albert Einstein. That is exactly what Danielle said. We have to change the model. We have to change the world because the world in which we are living in is changing faster than we are. The space probe went to Pluto yesterday. Can you ever imagine that we did Pluto in science in school, and now we can see what it looks like?
Perfect. Thank you for that kickoff.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the very inspirational words. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Marcida. I'm a PhD student for the University of Antwerp, and at the same time, I'm a trainer for non-formal education. So I kind of represent the person that is aiming to do positive and good things around. And I think that there can be definitely a merge between education as we know it formally, that is delivered from institutions and universities, and non-formal education and the work that many organizations are doing out there in the world. Well, what you actually said, it's quite true, that we need more motivation for young people to do the things that they want to do. But rather than just tackling the things inside of ourselves, we are here to learn not only from within, but we also learn from around. So we learn from the environment around us. And one of the main issues that we got to tackle in this debate, and maybe we can provide a few answers, is how to improve education. As Daniel said before, there is, of course, the educational system we have today is a bit outdated, because what we have today is inherited from the industrial revolution, and what we are facing today is a world that is changing dramatically, rapidly, because of technology, internet, globalization, a lot of concepts that are introducing and that are somehow surpassing our minds. But however, one thing that probably I would criticize the educational system nowadays, and it's not only me, it's a full bunch of scholars and authors that say that somehow education is killing creativity, in the sense that as human beings we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of things to discover and to do within ourselves, but because education frames you and wants you to be in a certain way, sometimes it's difficult to reach that potential. So when people ask me, why you, Marcida, besides of doing your PhD, your research, you are so active, you write for newspapers, you know, you write blogs, articles, you go to conferences, you inspire people, you give motivational speeches, why do you do that? And then I take just a moment to reflect that this is actually truly me. I'm being very honest with myself, and this is the way that I learn and the way that I grasp all the knowledge that is out there in the world. I like to inspire people, and I get a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, a lot of grit, because I like to talk to people and network and to express my creativity through writing and through speaking at the same time. So I think that first step is that you have to ask all yourselves, what are your strengths? And you somehow know the answers. Your intuition somehow knows what you really and actually want to do. And I believe that everybody, there is no moment to say that, yes, you are late, or you cannot achieve, or you cannot do the things you can do. There is always time for learning new abilities, capacities, and discovering new skills, and investing in yourself. So that's just my starting point. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madi, for sharing your story, and thank you, Marcela, for sharing also your story. I think it's very important, given also the audience, to maybe all of us present ourselves in a couple of words. So I'm just going to say that I was born in Romania. I lived there the first 20 years of my life, and as many of you know, our educational system is not necessarily one of the best, at least given the standards and the various tests that they are doing. I like very much what Madi was saying, that the limits, we impose them ourselves. And I think this is very important for all of us to try to understand ourselves deeper, what are our motivations and what is the purpose in life. I know it sounds very far away, But as all of us are the generation of so-called millennials or Generation Y, apparently studies show that we are those people who are trying to find our purpose and do not accept anymore those kind of repetitive jobs that are anyway disappearing. So I think we all agree that the educational system is far behind our needs and far behind the needs of the labor market, of the employers. But in a way, it's also up to us to define the learning that we want to gain, and also try to work with the stakeholders, to work with the teachers, with our parents, with our friends, with ourselves, to understand what is it that actually makes us engage. And I think the engagement for me, it's the key word. This is how I started, this is what brought me to Brussels, and just a couple of words about my story and then about the organization I represent. So as I said, I was born in Romania. There were no sort of programs of non-formal education at the time. We were just after communism, no civil sector, very strong. So I started to identify any kind of volunteering opportunities for summer. In the end, after a couple of years, there was inside the library a small team who was trying to gather information for citizens. And I was thrilled because I was getting so bored during summers. I joined that team and slowly I started to develop it, to start fundraising and to grow it substantially. Today is the Europe Direct Center, and it has a team, I think, of about 60 volunteers every year being selected. After that, I realized I can do much more, and the feeling of being able to actually engage others, have them follow, and have them being part of a team that is much bigger than what you can do by yourself, made me start doing projects for having other kids, other young people engage in such opportunities. And this is how I started to build small organizations to apply for European funds when I was just 18, and to lead teams of up to 10 people. And then again, I felt it was not enough because the civil sector, while doing great things, is lacking financial sustainability. So I started to dig into this issue, which is now, well, even at that time called social entrepreneurship. I started to understand what is it that makes it so special and what is the key principle behind it. Later, I arrived to study it in a master's in Italy. Then I came to the Commission because it was the moment when policies were being developed to promote the sector. And now I'm with Ashoka. How many of you know what is Ashoka? Okay, thank you. I don't feel alone then. Ashoka is basically the largest network of social entrepreneurs in the world. We now have more than 3,000. These are leading innovators with system-changing ideas. So they operate in all fields, and we cover more than 80 countries. I just want to mention that about 1,200 of them work in the field of education. So they are basically revolutionizing the way education is done today. And I think it's a lot that we can learn from them. You can just browse them on our page, browse their stories and understand what they do, and you can already get a lot of inspiration. I'll share later with you some ideas. We're also working with schools. We developed a program which is called Changemaker School. Change making is also the key competence, together with empathy, that we are promoting. But again, I'll discuss about this later. If I need to talk about barriers, I think the thing that stops us is the fact that young people are seen as problems rather than, part of the solution. And we see ourselves as the problem. When we think of youth unemployment, as Daniel was saying before, we see ourselves as the ones incapable of finding a job, rather the ones who have the potential to actually acquire the competencies and the skills that employers are looking for. Most of the time, these skills are soft skills or change-making skills. They refer to empathy, they refer to leadership, to team building, to creativity, to working in collaborative ways, and being able to actually engage people. I think it's something that we can develop ourselves. We should develop ourselves throughout our lives. I think it should start with the educational system, and I'm very happy to see that so many of you are interested in this topic, because it's up to all of us to actually contribute as parents later on, or as civil servants, or as people engaged in the civil sector. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Very interesting already. Pierre, do you want to say a few words?
Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Everybody's okay? I'm sorry, for me, it's a bit of a challenge. I need to sit. And as an entrepreneur, this is very difficult for me. And just thank you. The second big challenge I have is that usually I ask a lot of questions. I like to speak, but I like to also know what the audience is looking for and see how I can be of value. So I'm really looking forward to have your questions. But indeed, I think it's a good idea that I present myself. 3 years ago, I started my company, which is called Reach. I don't know if you have it there, so you're welcome to surf on the site. Not when I'm talking, please, later. And basically, I wanted to be a coach and do trainings for probably 15 years, something like that. And in 2007, I wanted to, again, I had this calling, I want to do it, I want to go for it. And do you know how long it took me to actually go for it, really? After 2007, it took me another 5 years to really say, okay, now I'm going. So now it's 3 years ago, I started my own company. We do training, coaching, and events. And I realized that beyond coaching, what I was really interested in was what's the perspective, what is the goal, what is the vision I want to achieve, and how can I help people to answer that question too. Because there's a lot of different ways to do coaching, but my coaching is about where do I see myself in 3 years' time. Because once I've been asked this question, I was in a job interview and somebody asked me, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? And honestly, I thought I was fainting. I couldn't answer the question. I was so stressed out. I was like, I have no clue where I want to be in 3 years' time. And it seemed it made a negative impact on the person. She sort of said, okay, he doesn't know where he's going. And this has been later on, because now I'm getting old. I don't know how old you are, but I'm getting old. I'm getting to my 40. I have 2 kids plus 2 kids. And I'm also the eldest of 6 in the family. So Daniel said earlier, if you have brothers and sisters, which is my case, I have 5 brothers and sisters, you can see that indeed everybody is different, and yes, it's true. It's very true. What we do is 3 years ago, we started a company, we started the coaching business, and we started around an idea, and I want to give it to you quickly. It's all about this question, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? And we see that a lot of people actually have dreams, they actually have a lot of passion and things they want to see happening in the future, but all they need is a bit of a tap on the back and say, this is a great idea, just go for it. You actually all have also a lot of great ideas, and I want to leave you with that question. If I come later and I ask you, oh, we haven't seen each other for 3 years, what happened to you? What are you going to answer? And because this is very, very strong. This is you, your desire, what you want to do, and what you can also bring to the world. And the world needs it. The world needs people who are going to go for what they're going to answer to that question, what happened to you the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Thanks. Peter, what about you?
Okay, so first, good morning. I'm very pleased to be here, to be invited to this event. And Peter Bauer, as you can see, I'm German, in the Commission now for 20 years. I started in DG, at that time it was DG3, which was enterprise. Then I was in research, and now for more than 10 years in education and culture. And there was vocational training, and over the last 6-7 years really in higher education more. Before I have worked for 10 years in a company. So I think I came a little by, I don't know, by chance I would say, or whatever, to the commission. So it was not something which I had thought of. At one point, the opportunity was there, and I came here, and then by the end I stayed. Sometimes, okay, this is how it is. Now the point is, I think it's interesting here, and I don't think that the situation is as black as you say, because you are here. So I think the educational system did not fail completely. I think there's still some people who go through it. And I think this is the first thing also, what I find a little tricky is, of course, when you speak about the education system, it does not exist, particularly not in Europe. And this is, of course, what we see. Because, the point is you have education systems, and they are very different. And, between the member states. And again, I mean, as you have heard, I'm from Germany, I think even within member states, because there, of course, the competence for the education is within the Länder. And this is, I mean, also applying for some other countries. So I think the situation is really very different, very diverse. And I think this is the other point. I think the problems are not the same in all the countries. I think some of the countries, they are moving or have moved quite well on all different levels of, I think, education. They have tried to bring in reforms in the school education and also on the higher education level. And I think the point is, I mean, this is of course what we try then to do on our, I mean, on European level, is to see, okay, what is happening, where are the problems, which are the things that are working well in different member states, and then try to bring it out and promote it, and then see to what extent, I mean, others can pick it up. And of course, via our programs, we try to support this. So on one side, Erasmus+, you see, I mean, we have also Marie Curie, which is of course more addressing, I mean, PhDs and researchers, how to develop this. Now the topic of here, entrepreneurship. I think this is of course one thing which is at the core of our activities in the unit I am. So far, I mean, the last time we had focused more on higher education, but now also we enlarged more to schools. I mean, there were other colleagues who work on this, but now we also try to bring in this. And there, again, one remark. I think entrepreneurship, how we understand it, and you know, and there was a definition specified in 2006, and I think it is important. It's not only about entrepreneurs. It's not only about people who create the companies. If you go like this into a school, in many, it will not happen. Teachers will just not buy in. And I think it's much more. It's about this mindset. It's about the skills. And I think we need entrepreneurial people also in big administrations, in big companies, in small companies, wherever. And I think this is the point. And this is the kind of message which we try to tell and tell and tell and tell. Because very often, sometimes you speak to, I mean, I've spoken to rectors of universities, even recently, and he told me he wanted to call his university entrepreneurial university, and he was blocked by politicians because they said, no, we don't want that a university is entrepreneurial, is a company, will only work for companies and whatever. And then I think, you know, this is a misunderstanding, I think, where we have to work against. And I think this is what we try to promote. And one big thing is, of course, that we need obviously change in the different organizations. And there, I think, I mean, I hope also that, you know, you can help us in this. And I think, and really, I think that the situation is not black and white. And again, I think also the problem is not the young people. I think a problem is in a number of countries, of course, youth unemployment. And I think it's something which we cannot accept. Now, the point is, of course, and I think the solution can only be found in cooperation. I think it's also too easy to say that just young people just do it, and I think it's too complicated today. I think just to, because I mean, this is the other risk, you know, that everybody can take his destiny and then he will work it out. Because I mean, this is, of course, sometimes what, I mean, society or the politicians would like, but I think it's more complicated. I think you have to help, you have to support, and education can do a lot. And I think this is the point a little, of course, how can we support it? How can we bring in things that make things happening? But okay, I mean, I think I will stop, because if not, I can speak probably the whole morning, and afterwards go a little into more specific things that we try to do, for example. And I don't know if you want to discuss more on schools or on higher education. But of course, I mean, what we, for example, do on the higher education level, and I think most people of you are coming, or are in higher education, or coming out of higher education. And there also you should see yourself already as sort of privileged people. I mean, the other thing, not everybody has the chance and the opportunity to go to higher education. So I think, and of course, also, if you look also employment rates, I mean, you know, you have better chances. But of course, things can be improved, and I think we should try to improve them. But okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Now, I haven't promised too much, right? There are 5 very interesting speakers here next to me. Now, are there any questions from the floor at this stage? You're still warming up? That's fine.
What are your barriers?
You don't have to. You don't have to. Let's, or, yeah, the lady in the front. Paloma. Do you want? Okay. Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks
yeah, the reason why, first of all, I'm Daniela. Hi, everyone. Good morning. From Isaac in Belgium. You're going to hear about us later on in the discussions. Why I did not want to ask a question at the first round was because it's quite controversial to start with. Let's put it like that. But I think we have a panel of very good speakers. and also organizers that can answer the question. Obviously, education reform has been debated, discussed in politics, TV shows everywhere. Our teachers tell us that also every time. But the question is, for example, this event. This event is also created in a very traditional sense. We have the speakers that are important people. We have whoever in the audience, which we later on will emphasize, obviously, through discussions. We have people outside in the station that are homeless, and we do see them because they're not invisible. So maybe a question, how do you perceive the organization of this event to be a mirroring of society and somehow still playing it safe, which obviously a lot of young people are doing through their choices of studies and everything. So that's why it's a tough question to begin with, I know.
Indeed, very tough, very difficult.
No more questions.
No, but it's really good. Somebody made the start, and then with a very challenging intervention. Yeah, Maddie, please.
Because I'm just as controversial as you. This event and all the majority of the events in Brussels are an exact mirror of the Brussels bubble. It's completely not in reality. It doesn't recognize the problems that are out there in society. Example number one. We are 52% women in the European Union. Name me one EU institution that has at least 30% women on its decision-making process. Not one. We're not even representative of the women. Name me any institution which has young people in the decision-making process. None. They're not with reality. Every single EU institution is holding cocktail receptions while we talk about poverty alleviation. We are flying people, me included. I went to discuss ACP, Afro-Caribbean Pacific, in Cameroon. Now, I am working in Cameroon with a refugee camp, supplying and making for the women sanitary towels, because the women can't have clean time during their menstrual periods. Now, I'm sorry, it's very direct, and I'm having to tell you this, but at the same time, we just flew 80 people to Cameroon, put them in a hotel, paid for their food, and I can't get project money for these women in these refugee camps. I'm sorry, this is the bubble that we live in, and how we wake up the politicians is now the biggest problem. And I'm sorry, and I am again going to throw it back to the young people, but instead of sitting there complaining that we're not included, as we are doing as women and feminists, let's start taking what is ours and start saying we need to have X percentage of young people included in the decision-making process. X percentage of women, not as quotas, but as a reality. And the same with entrepreneurs. You know, entrepreneurship is discussed at so many conferences, but there's never an entrepreneur in the room. DG, the commission, it's going back 5 years at least, so things have changed since then. But they had a conference on entrepreneurship education. There were 300 to 400 people in the room, and I'm sitting at the back somewhere, and I asked the question, the first question out. I asked the first question. Could you please tell me how many entrepreneurs are in the room? Not one. I was the only one. And we were discussing entrepreneurship education. The second question I asked is, why do we teach business planning? Oh, well, we teach business planning so that people can access finance. If you're starting your business to access finance, you're starting your business for the wrong reason, aren't you? You start your business because you have an idea and you want to prove that your idea has a value. How we get people to wake up and understand that we are living in this bubble is the biggest challenge now for the European Union, because whilst Europe sits in its bubble, the rest of the world is walking all over it, and that is the fear for the European Union.
Maybe just to conclude, I think it's up to all of us to try to see the solutions where the others see the problem. So what keeps us from doing another conference or unconference or whatever you want to call it, where we completely change the format. And I think things are changing. And even in the Commission, I remember last year there were different formats, trying to involve the people, trying to democratize the process of policy making. Changes take time, take enormous amount of time. It's up to us to actually push and accelerate these timings. So I think, you know, it's a matter of, Ashoka's vision is everyone is a change maker. It sounds very American, it sounds very far from the reality, as you were saying before, Peter. Maybe not everyone can actually contribute, they say. But what is it that actually keeps us? If you look at kids who are playing, who are then put into an educational system that frames them and tries to put them into a very standard way of, you know, getting from one educational step or level to another. But if you change that and if you try to help them in identifying the issues that they have around them, the challenges, and how they can contribute in very small pieces to actually, you know, if you look at, you know, underdeveloped countries where kids are not all kids are going to school, just have the neighbor get him and, you know, share materials so that they can go together to school and learn together and put them in practice some small programs for other kids. I mean, change starts with really each of us in our communities at small scale, but together we can make it bigger and we can, you know, pressure then also the policymaker to change something on the structural level.
Can I make?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Does that work? Oh, yeah, okay. I just wanted to come back to your question because it's a very good question. And one of the things I do as an entrepreneur and also what I try to help people doing is to look not so much at the problem. The problem is just there as a signal that something needs to be changed or something can happen. And very quickly you need to move on to something like a solution. And what would it be? So indeed, your remark was, it looks like a regular settings, like it has been done so many times. It means that you have an idea. It means that there's something you want to see different. So what I want to say first is I want to congratulate the ProAktiv Summit and the people here because they took an initiative. I think it's one of the first. I think it was one of the first time you do it. So they have the, we can say they did it. So they did it, it's the first time, and you have a great idea, you have a fantastic idea, you need to do it. You need to base yourself on what you've seen, what it told you something's wrong here, and I would like to be like this, and then you need to find a way to do it. Thanks for your question.
Peter, do you want to react to that? And then we have another question from the audience.
Yeah, just shortly, I mean, on the bubble. Okay, let's see. I think the question is very complicated. I think the point is also that, I don't know, I think things are happening effectively, and I think they are happening here also for the format. I mean, we have already tried to organize events differently, to have more discussion, whatever. I think on the other side, this is also a format which can work well, and I think in particular if there is exchange and if you have the right people. And I mean, this is another point where we have also a clear, real problem is, of course, involvement of the people we would like to get. And I mean, you said, okay, there was only one entrepreneur in the room. Now the question is, okay, why then? Either they were not invited or they don't come. And the point is, what we see is, for example, we have launched also a sort of approach, like this here, where we try to bring in stakeholders from companies and universities, bring them together on European level first, what we call this University Business Forum, and bring in their people. And we succeed, okay, in getting business people as speakers in the panels, but I mean, it's extremely difficult to get them into the room. We get their rectors, we get vice chancellors, we get students, we get people from universities, and then people here from Brussels, but it's almost impossible to get companies into the room, and I think it would be of great added value for them because then they could discuss with the people from the university. but almost impossible. Now, what we also try to do is now we go to member states. And even there, I mean, for example, last year, we organized several of them. We try now to do it together with employer organizations and organizations so who have this link to the companies, to the people who work there, to the entrepreneurs, and try to get them. But it's extremely difficult. And of course, the other point is always because we don't have time or we cannot do and whatever. And I think the point is, so if there you have ideas and things, I think we are more than happy to take them up and also to see how we can get this involvement, this engagement, because I think this is where we can then, you know, trigger change. And I think, but it's really a challenge. And it's not because people don't want, I mean, also on our side, it's just we did not yet find, I mean, the right instrument or the right way to get in touch with them and then get really in contact.
Stephanie, may I have a first question?
Yeah, maybe you can go ahead and talk about the point of view from the organizers, and then we can take the question from.
So actually, I am really happy you posed this question, because this actually allows us to see the real problem that Europe is facing. You know, the thing is that we cannot create new stuff until we really realize that we are the ones creating the new stuff. So we can have amazing speakers in here, like that. I really like them because they are on reality. You know, it's not like, even sometimes like if we have people from the commission, you expect them to be boring and like come here with, no, it's true, with like reports or whatever. No, we have people actually talking about problems, about solutions, that is the important thing, and roots in reality, in great, how do we do things? But, voila. We have in here like plenty of participants that I am sure they are all amazing, coming to a conference in order, as a reactive being, waiting for participants for speakers to let us know what should we do to change things. I mean, nothing, simply say, let's change it. And this is something that should come from us. So if we truly want to change format, we have to come here as the ones that are, I mean, in a conference, a business, a classroom is not something that teacher or like speakers or organizers do. It's something that we come here and we do all together, because we are all part of this society. We are all part of the problems, and we are all part of the solutions. So until we really don't see this, doesn't mind which kind of format like you try to frame things with, doesn't mind how many conferences do you speak in, on how many conferences do you attend. This is not the real thing. I come here, I truly give all my feedback because I have a say on which is the solution like Europe need, or I need personally, or like the ones that I have here need. And then, because I've been participating actively in this, because I know I am part of whatever I am doing, I get.
So I think at this stage, I'd just like to recap very briefly and then start off with another question, or more of a prompt where I think you can add to. Now, we've heard a lot of things, and certainly heard that our panel has very interesting experiences. We heard that informal learning matters. Laura told us about soft skills, team building, leadership. Daniel also talked about that. Pierre, from his experience, actually was quite interesting to see that there was 5 years in between the idea of starting a business and then actually putting this into practice. Now, a lot of issues here. Then we've seen that the educational system, a lot of people said, okay, we have issues there, it's not working in my country, it's not working in my country. And then there's something that Pierre said that really stuck with me, is one thing to see the problem, and it can be also used as starting thinking about the solutions. Now, the education system as a whole is maybe too broad, so thank you very much, Carol, for that input. So I would say, why don't we talk about what the educational system can do in terms of fostering employability and entrepreneurship, and whether you have any kind of concrete examples that you think you've either seen in the past working out or that you would like to see implemented. Is that something also that you find interesting? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay.
Well, I'd like to share a bit of my experience and some of the insights that I've learned throughout the years. First of all, I must say that education is about teaching and learning. So, and learning specifically is a very individual process. So the way that we learn goes very individually and we learn from our own experience. It's kind of like living. And learning can be from formal institutions, which are schools, universities, and so on. It can also come from non-formal education or non-formal learning, which can come from working in groups, all these methodologies about brainstorming and bringing creativity to learning. And it can also come from informal ways. Like we are learning, for example, somebody can learn something new right now that heard from Pierre or from another speaker, something that he or she didn't know before. So the informal way of learning comes in a way that you don't even know, you are not even aware that you are learning, but comes from your everyday life experience, let's put it that way. Now, what I see is that in education, particularly in our education systems, of course, they are quite different. There are big differences between how they are constructed and the way that schools operate and so on. But a few recommendations that I would give, or a few suggestions that I would have for improving that, is that, first of all, everything starts from the teacher. Believe me, if the teacher gives all the heart and all the grit to not only teaching, but making students and young people learn, because teaching is not only about downloading materials and just giving them to the students and yeah, this is it, my job is done. But teaching has to be go simultaneously with the capacities and the capabilities that each individual has. And as persons, as we already said, we are completely different and we are very diverse. So I believe that all teachers, they have to know very well their students, where their strengths and where the way that they learn is. For example, when I was at school, I could learn only just by reading or just by taking small notes and so on. But I had other colleagues that I know that they were learning because of writing, and I didn't understand that. To me, it sounded very awkward. I was always reacting, how do you learn? By writing what you read. Because this was their way of learning, and this is how they were. It was easy for some people to grasp ideas. So by knowing where are the strengths of each individual, we can do a lot of that. And another thing that I have that we can definitely improve in our educational system is the thing that we have to give a lot of freedom to students, to pupils, students, and everybody out there. So we have to give freedom of choosing the subjects that they want to invest and they want to be competent and to have the skills. For example, I was studying math when I was at high school and I didn't even like it, so why I shouldn't even have to invest on that? And there is a lot of social pressure, peer pressure that, oh yeah, you should do this at school, or you should study medicine, yeah, because you become a doctor and this is school, or yeah, because we don't have a doctor in our family or our history generation, you should be a doctor. So there is a lot of pressure, but I think that the best thing that every individual can do is try to understand within him or herself what is the best way, or what is the education that they want to, or what is the path that they want to choose in life. And of course, it can be different variations. You can start with something and then you can realize that, oh yeah, I don't like that anymore, but this is not a downfall, but it can rise you up, because maybe you can change career, you can change prospects, and this is the way that you try to discover who you really are. It's kind of like life. There is a process. You are failing, succeeding, and so on. So, but maybe that's something that we can discuss later on. Thank you.
I think what I can contribute is the sort of lessons that we learn from the schools that we're working with, and from the, as I said, 1,200 social entrepreneurs that work in the educational field and with young people, and trying to empower them to identify their way. And I think, as we saw also from Daniel this morning, the educational system today maybe is not able to really adapt to such a globalizing and fast, ever-changing society where technology occupies a huge role. And I think this is key because, as you said as well, the relationship, this is what we see, that the relationship between the teacher and the student needs to be changed. We cannot anymore have the teachers as the ones who have all the knowledge in the world when we have Wikipedia, which probably has much more. You cannot have trust between the teacher and the student unless there is a relationship, not necessarily always of equality, but much more, like trying to at least dissimulate equality, in which the student becomes a co-creator of knowledge and not only a recipient of knowledge. I think these are key elements that we need to look at when we try to conceive as policymakers, especially a reform in the educational sector, because we cannot afford anymore to have an educational system that is not reflecting today's world. And we cannot expect having change from young people unless we provide them with a safe environment for them to grow, and having them actually be free to be inventive, to be creative, to you know, like foster their creativity so that they can identify those incredible solutions that we're all looking for and waiting for. We have huge problems despite probably a population that is more equipped and more skilled and has more knowledge than ever before, and still we're not able to find those solutions. We do need to ask what is the root of this. And probably it needs to come also from the formal educational system, but I do think that it's not only from there. And we've seen how, you know, like just parents or people working in the civil social entrepreneurship field just come up with bottom-up solutions, very small scale, but start working together. This is the co-creation model of working with schools, working with local governments, working with citizens, with parents, is indeed a key element. And we see that this works. I cannot say we have identified the solution, and I don't trust in one solution. I think that there is a plurality, multidisciplinary solutions that focus on, you know, developing peacemaking, and I think this is with all the migration crisis as well. This is absolutely a component we should look into, and we should try to identify how we can engage this element, this topic, peacemaking, in the educational system. So. Let's start looking from, I think, from the, you know, various challenges we have and how we can promote a generation that can actually be prepared to face these challenges.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Pierre, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Always ready to share something. So we're talking about education system, right? Who here is actually a teacher or a school director, or is there anybody in the education system here? So being able to influence, okay. So I guess everybody else, you're not at school anymore, or here of course on the panel, but in the room. And so the others, you are out of school, right? So you won't be able to affect education. Okay. You? You're teaching. Right, okay. I see. Okay, but indeed, what I will share quickly, briefly, is that indeed this discussion is going on everywhere. Educational system is too rigid, it's from an older century, and it doesn't meet the requirements for today. And linked to that question, there's also entrepreneurship. Where does entrepreneurship fit in schools? What we see is that indeed you learn at school to digest something and do what you're being told to do, which is very good for working in an industry or working in a company. And it's very different from being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is completely different. It would mean, just like the nice question was, the first nice question would be, something's wrong here, it needs to be fixed, what can I do? And how now can I find the resources to fix it? And what would be the solutions? We don't have that too much in the educational system. And indeed, it needs to change, and I'm assuring you, every week I get into discussions, or I see panels and places where this is discussed. When are we going to see change? That's a different question. I want to throw some numbers, and then I will leave the mic, but I found very interesting in the last summit I went to, discussing entrepreneurship, that we are, in Europe, we have the lowest level of self-employed and entrepreneurs in the whole world. That's amazing. When you see Africa, you see America, United States, Asia, South Pacific, whatever, China, the whole thing, we have the lowest level of self-employed and entrepreneurs. And when we say entrepreneurs, it's people who are starting businesses in the first 3 years and a half. So that does tell you a bit about the mentality we are in. And the mentality mostly in Europe is find a place, and stay there. This is what we've been told, and this is what school prepares us to do. Which is fine, basically, because what would it be a problem? Because if we look at France, Germany, I will give you some more numbers, they are very strong economies. They are among the strongest economy in the world, France and Germany. I'm not talking about Belgium. This is probably too small to be on the list. But hey, another number. Do you know what is the number of the percentage of entrepreneurs in Belgium? If you look at the active population, what is the percentage of entrepreneurs? Give me a number, a guess. That's too drastic. Another number. 10%. Okay, we are about 5%. Okay, 5.5% of entrepreneurs. Everybody else is small percentage self-employed. Everybody else employees. Okay. Do you know what the percentage is in the US? A number. It's 15%. In China, in Brazil, are around 17 and 18%, which means that we have 3 times less entrepreneurs in here. Is that a problem? Because France and Germany is, the powerful economies. Why would it be a problem? Well, the answer is that entrepreneurship is you look at a problem, you try to fix it in very short words, okay? And this is, I would think that we haven't seen in the history of mankind as many problems as we have today. Everything is falling apart. Everything is changing very fast. And what we need to go forward, and it's not a choice, this is just the way it is, we need to be able to adapt very, very fast and be solution-oriented, because the economy is going down, because socially there are a lot of problems and they need to be tackled, and ecologically we also have a lot of challenges. So what I see as a problem is that we don't have the mentality in Europe to face these challenges just because of the mindset. And I make a link, and this is deliberate, this is the way I look at it, between being an entrepreneur or wanting to build stuff and being able to face challenges. And I think there we have a challenge, and I think indeed it starts with education, and something needs to be done there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre. Now, I'd like to leave behind my hat of moderator and talk to you a bit from the research perspective, actually. I talked about this youth entrepreneurship report before, and I'm actually inspired by you here because we have numbers in there as well. We looked at entrepreneurship activities of young people, so that's the age group from 15 up to 29, and we found that on average we have about 6.5% of young people in the European Union being self-employed, so being entrepreneurs. And this is in stark contrast to 48% that think that that is actually a valuable way to go, something that they would like to do. So there's a big cliff, right, where you can see 48% is almost 50% who think, all right, I could do this, and then 6.5% who actually do it. Having said that, I would like to put something out there, and we actually found, and we actually thought from our research that fostering youth entrepreneurship is not a panacea to the youth unemployment problems that we have right now in Europe. It is partly, yes, because young people create their own jobs and then maybe also employ others, yes, but it's actually not possible to solve all the problems we have. So if we have member states that have just less than 50% of youth unemployment, it will not be enough to just foster youth entrepreneurship because it's not for everybody. And that would be my statement. Maybe you want to react on that? Or?
I would like also to add a little. I mean, on what was said, I mean, first, of course, teachers. Yes, obviously. I think it's in the heart of all discussions on our side. And I mean, if you look, for example, also, you look at PISA and you see always that, of course, for example, Finland is doing well. But one of the reasons, I mean, and I think it's one clear reason, is the quality of teachers. And I think in Finland, they are, for example, still able to attract very good students who want to be teachers, who are really a sort of aspiration. And the point, of course, in many other countries, they don't find enough teachers. So they have really to run after them. So how can we change it? So I think there are really, really big issues. But of course, I would fully agree, if you don't have good teachers, if you don't have teachers who have this, you know, this capacity also to inspire, to motivate and whatever, I think it will be difficult. It's not, I mean, technology, yes, but I mean, it's not that you can everything change by technology. You still need a teacher. You need people. So how to attract them into this? The other thing about entrepreneurship, self-employment, I would be cautious on that side. I don't think that entrepreneur equals self-employed. I don't think so. And I think there's also discussions I had in the past with, in particular, colleagues from new member states. I mean, when there are things changes in the 90s, many people, because they closed down the big public organizations and whatever, they made them self-employed. They gave them a course for one day. Now you are an entrepreneur. And it had even very negative effects. I mean, now people there, they have a sort of connotation when they hear entrepreneur. No, this is not what I want. And I think, therefore, I mean, cautious. So I think for me, entrepreneur is more. And then, of course, also what we dream of in Europe is, of course, also these entrepreneurs who don't just create a company, I mean, which is very good with 4 or 5 people, but of course the entrepreneurs who afterwards, you know, the gazelles, so who create the growing, I mean, the fast-growing companies. And of course, I think in some countries, and this again, in particular, of course, in higher education, I think they have launched a number of initiatives to identify perhaps people who have this caliber or to have also this kind of mindset, and then give them the means and the instruments and the support that they can succeed. And I mean, you see things coming up in some countries. And I think this is, of course, I mean, therefore, I think entrepreneur also, it's different. I think one entrepreneur is not another. So I think the point is again, I think it's important to stimulate, to see this entrepreneurial mindset, this spirit, this skills. So, I mean, fully agree with what was said. Take responsibility, take your life in hands. And I think this should normally be the goal, the objective of all education system. Obviously, that people are able to take responsibility, to be responsible, and then to take decisions. So I think the point, of course, it's not so, I mean, it's not so easy, and therefore I think this is also why, I mean, in some countries things are happening, in others, yeah, they take probably more time and are more difficult. And education is difficult to change. I mean, this you see, of course. I think it's quite conservative. It's a very big tanker, and then to turn it around, I think it takes, I mean, as it was also said, of course, it takes time. On the other side, there is perhaps not so much time. I think this is a little the big issue. So how can we accelerate and introduce these changes? But okay, yeah. I mean.
Thank you. Anybody want to say anything? Maddie, maybe?
No, I'll just back up something Peter said and something Pierre Yves said earlier. Let me give you, because we have a great problem in the European Union, but also in governments across the world. We have to put people in boxes, and an entrepreneur doesn't fit inside the box. And that's one of the problems that we currently have. So how are we defining entrepreneurship? How are we defining education? What does formal mean? What does informal mean? What does youth mean? Everything. And we just get messed up with labeling everything. So entrepreneurship has been defined by the European Commission as turning an idea into an action at any point in your life, be it your home life, your work life, whatever, which is great. It's really what it means. And they're now working on a great, I really like Marko Kurovic, who's from the European Commission, because he says when we're talking about entrepreneurship education, we should talk about classrooms and not classrooms, where the ideas can come out, where you can argue, where you can stimulate debate. And that's why these events should be really great, because you should be stimulating. I'm controversial. I do it on purpose because I want you to think. I want you to go away and think, yeah, what she said. Yeah, it was harsh, but it made me think. So here's my definition of my simple analogy for entrepreneurship.
I think was not the right when you say, I think the European Union, I think we value human capital. I think everybody is very clear this is, I mean, what Europe has. The point is afterwards, of course, in implementation, it might not always get through, you know, how it should and so. But I think we should not get out the message that European Union or whoever, you know, does not care about human capital. I think we care very much. The point is, of course, how to support it, I mean, the development of human capital in the best way. So just because I would not like that this goes out of the room saying, okay, you doesn't care about human capital. It's not true. I think we care very, very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Now, I think a lot of interesting discussions here, and thank you, Nora, very much for your question. I think it was kind of nice to have those last words in terms of what people would do if they could do anything, right? And it's maybe a good moment in time to leave you with that. Really interesting, what I thought would emerge here was also the role of role models that I would maybe encourage you to keep in the back of your mind, and maybe you can again discuss this later on in the day. So the role of role model and mentality change also in terms of allowing failure of young people. And I think that is it from me. Now there's two more things. Pierre obviously wants to intervene very briefly. And then Maddie has some kind of present for you, which is obviously a nice thing to end the session with. Thank you very much for your attention. You've been a great audience. Thanks.
Just one last thing I wanted to add on failure. I was at a summit two weeks ago, something like that, on failure. And indeed, it's very difficult when you fail your business in Europe. It depends from one country to another. But do you know that in the first 5 years, 50% of the businesses don't make it? So if you go to be an entrepreneur, you have one chance out of two that it's not going to work in the first 5 years. And that bankruptcy is actually going to kill you. As it's been said, you can't open a bank account. You're a bad guy. So and you shouldn't have tried. This is basically the message. But talking about failure, I heard someone saying, we have to admit failure. Failure is part of the deal, and it is. But the best thing I've heard is that for an entrepreneur, failure is not an option. And I really want to leave you with that. Failure is not an option. Fuck failure. I'm going to make it. And I would like you to repeat this with me. Fuck failure. I'm going to make it. Thank you for being here.
So very quickly on the human capital thing, because it is completely correct. We do value human capital. But I employ 14 people around the world. I have never looked at one of their CVs. We want to see people who want to work. We want to know what you want to do. Whatever it says on your CV is not always what's going to get you the job. So bear that in mind, please. Now, I'm lucky enough to have made it. And very much like Pierre-Louis, sorry, that's my relation, Pierre-Yves does, is we don't ask you where you want to be in 5 years' time. We ask, 3 years' time, we ask you to put what it is that you want to do on the top of a blank piece of paper. 95% of people cannot do that exercise. 95% of people don't know what it is that they really, really want to do. And I have one goal in life, just one. On the top of my piece of paper, it says that I want to turn 7 billion ideas into action. And I'm 52, and I'm going to die when I'm 75. I know it. Don't ask me how. Right? But I know I'm going to achieve my 7 billion ideas to action for all the reasons I gave before, because it's so important to me. I'm on number 26,000, and I need you to help me to get to the 7 billion. So you will each get one of these. So Sharika, who is my intern, is sitting there, and she'll hand them out to you. You each get one of these. Like you, each one of them is individual. They're all handmade because each one of you is individual. You take it out of its little plastic package and you put it inside your wallet. But before you put it inside your wallet, you make a commitment to change your life or somebody else's life. And every time you open your purse or your wallet, you will first of all think of me. That's branding. Second, you will remember your commitment to make the change. And that is how I am going to get 7 billion ideas to action. So thank you very much for helping me. Don't forget to pick up your bead because you count towards my 7 billion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that it was really inspiring. That is truly what we need in order to say, great, we are inspiring. Now we have to inspire others. So thank you very much. You are also welcome to join, because now we have declarations of like a negotiation that we are doing on youth unemployment. So of course you are welcome to join. And like just for you, as we are gonna start now explaining what are we gonna do, as we are gonna now start now taking action, you know, so we are like seeing a lot of things and discussing a lot of things. Now what we truly have to do is to say, perfect. What are the solutions that we are gonna do? The concrete ones. What do we want? What do we expect? With what are we gonna start? Okay? So I think that all of you have a page with the different groups for the negotiations. So feel free to find yourself and go to the place that is like located right there, like with the different mentions of the different groups, so we can start working on this. Thank you so much again, really.